Hey, this is PH, and welcome to another episode of Good Bible Knowledge with PhD. In this set of videos, I want to answer common questions about the Bible in a fun and creative way, and I hope these videos will be helpful for your own spiritual journey in Jesus. Let's get started. Who is Nehemiah? Nehemiah was a contemporary of Ezra, who led the third and final return to Jerusalem in 444 BC after the Babylonian exile. This was 13 years after the second return led by Ezra, and 94 years after the first return led by Zerubbabel. The book of Nehemiah is divided into two sections. The first section focuses on the reconstruction of the walls of Jerusalem, and the second on the restoration of the people. Nehemiah had risen through the ranks to a coveted position of cupbearer to the king. In 445 BC, Nehemiah's kinsmen were returning from a journey to Jerusalem and informed Nehemiah of the desperate condition of the Jewish homeland. Upon hearing this news, Nehemiah's heart was broken, and he fasted and prayed for several days. While he was serving the king noticed Nehemiah's troubled heart, and Nehemiah shared his concern for the condition of his homeland. By God's grace, the king said to Nehemiah, "Whatever you ask will be granted to you." The king commissioned Nehemiah to return to Jerusalem, giving him royal letters, granting him safe passage, as well as whatever materials were needed to rebuild the walls of the holy city. When Nehemiah arrived in Jerusalem, he inspected the walls and found the situation to be even worse than he had imagined, as the city and its walls lay in ruins. He gathered the people and recounted the faithfulness of God and called all the people to rise up and build. Work began immediately, with all the people building different sections of the walls according to the districts in which they lived. As the work progressed, opposition arose among the neighboring people, first in the form of mockery, and then in the threat of conspiracy and violence. As the Israelites sought the Lord in prayer, Nehemiah divided the workers, setting half of the people on military watch and half on construction, with every worker carrying a tool in one hand and a sword in the other. The Lord was with Nehemiah as the walls of Jerusalem were completed in an astonishing 52 days, to which even the enemies of God acknowledged that this was a miraculous work of the Lord. The construction of the walls was followed by a consecration of the people, as all the people gathered and listened to Ezra the priest read the book of the law from morning to afternoon that day. And the entire nation responded with weeping and repentance and worship, and they together renewed their covenant with God to be a holy people unto the Lord. What can we learn from the story of Nehemiah? In ancient times, when a city was without walls, it was dangerously vulnerable to attack and utter destruction. And through the person of Nehemiah, God provided miraculous protection and the preservation of his people. Nehemiah gave up the high position as a royal cupbearer to the king in order to identify with the suffering of his people. In the same way, Jesus, the Son of God, left his kingly position in heaven in order to share in the suffering of mankind. And God would use Jesus' sacrifice and resurrection to bring about the salvation of everyone who would put their faith in him. Thanks for listening to another episode of Good Bible Knowledge. We'll see you next time.